This is a fresh install of SOLIDWORKS 2023. It's in pre-release 1, so we're just kind of getting started with it, seeing what's changed. There are a few noticeable differences, but one of the things that with the previous installs, it's still finding my system files, templates that I've created prior. So let's go with a part inch. For the dodecahedron, I've done this a couple times, so it'll look way smoother than, hopefully, than the first time. The icosahedron went pretty well, and other than the number of facets that I missed, I think the end result was pretty good. So this is my test computer on my desktop that I go do the installs and try them out, and as they get to service pack 0, then I decide if I want to go ahead and put it on the computer I use daily. Alright, so sketch. I'm still going to use 3D sketches and the surfaces because of all of the facets on the dodecahedron. So we get into the 3D sketch, and again, first thing you'll notice, we go to draw a line or do anything, it's going to go to X, Y, and we'll have that floating origin. Well, I'd like to be a little more, have a little more orientation than that. So since I have my command manager compressed, well, let's go ahead and push pin it. We have enough room. I'll go into the center line with the front plane. When I double click, the front plane becomes active, and it's sort of acting like a 2D sketch, but I'm still in the 3D sketch, so it has those rules. And because I want this to be somewhat stable, we're going to start off with like 6 inches there. And then I'm going to create a couple of at least one offset plane. Well, let's go ahead into the top plane and we'll get started on the geometry. So the dodecahedron is 12 pentagons, or 5-sided. We don't have access to the polygon in the 3D sketch, mainly because, while even putting it on a plane and rotating it, it has the potential to go all over the place. No construction circle, so I access it and make it to the geometry, change it to construction geometry, and then we'll put a dimension on this as well, just as a placeholder. So 5 is good enough. Select L on the keyboard for line, draw the 5 lines, see if it grabs any relations. Again, not really anything too precise here. I do want one of these to be horizontal, and then Control select for the 5 items. We're going to make those equal. That's interesting, and so I can see that didn't go horizontal. And we'll start making these tangents. So the selection process is to select, Control select, go to tangent, pick something that isn't selected so it clears the other 2, hold down the Control button, tangent, select, clear, and it's doing the clear automatically. So all I'm having to do is select something that's blue, it clears the selected items. Right, so in this case, the darker blue. Oh, and so this doesn't have my magenta for the first selection, so that's why they're showing up in the cyan or the light blue. So a little bit different maybe from the other videos. Alright, so now this is all in the plane. When I double click, the plane disappears, and now we have our geometry ready to start. Okay, so what do I want to do? Maybe I'm pretty much, my strategy is going to be to generate 2 facets so that they drive the rest of the geometry. I was thinking about doing the midpoint, but let's go ahead and change that to 3. And when we use the sketch plane, it's inserting a plane into a 3D sketch. We'll go to the top, and then it's going to be parallel. Since I didn't pre-select my items, they're not jumping right in. Alright, so we can go to our circle. I opened or double-clicked on that plane, or that plane becomes active. And it shouldn't matter if this is a construction circle or an object circle, so we'll stay with it. Alright, and the big thing about 3D Sketch is being able to manipulate these 2D planes and deciding if you need to do the regular 3D sketching. So we'll talk about the kind of the freeform sketching later on. So I need let's go with a center line. And since it went to the freeform, let's go into the right plane, mainly because it bisects my horizontal line there, and I want this to go from the midpoint. Oh, didn't activate, so I can tell it didn't activate because I don't have the grid. So one of the things we can do is I started the line, I could have deleted it, but I can also, because that plane is active and the center line's already started, I can say put it on the plane. Otherwise it would kind of rotate. That endpoint would be coincident to the midpoint of the horizontal line, but everything else would be able to move in all directions, really an orbit. And then let's see if I bring that up, it's probably, it does find the quadrant, but and it gave me a coincidence. So, but it didn't go fully defined, so that's kind of a hint. So if I select that, it has the on plane. So let's go for one more center line. And I'll just bring it out normal. And one of the things is along Z, since it didn't get a relation, I didn't go back into the to the plane, which reminds me my 3D sketch planes are not being shown, so that means that they're turned off. So under our view, the arrow pull down, and view 3D sketch planes. There we go. Now if I need to get back into that one, I can double click it. So if I wanted to pick that, I can put it on the plane. That helps again with the orientation. And because this is able to move, and if I double click out of it, now these move together. All of this is to support then a structure for the next plane. So first reference will be the bottom horizontal line, and then plane through a point, so those 3 points. I could have also picked the 2 endpoints, but the line satisfies that condition. So through a line at a point is going to create that sketch, or that plane that I can sketch on. Alright, so there's a lot going on in the 3D sketches, and it's one of the reasons that I recommend that you hold off on getting too far into those. So I don't want that on the midpoint. I do want that to come up to the end point. And it's going to be the same size as this one, so let's go ahead and make it equal. And I'm not sure. Now let's see if I can go tangent. Alright, so that flips it around, and that's kind of what I want, is for it to adjust that plane and do that that sizing automatically based on our geometry. So for construction, let's bring the other lines in. This one's already in place. I don't need to overwrite it. And 5. Alright, so it puts us now to where all of these will be equal. So select, control, select, however many times that was, and equal. And then same basic process of setting these to tangent. and it gets a little bit confusing. Okay, it gets a lot confusing. Alright, so let's go back over here, tangent, and make sure that I'm getting all of these selected. I don't see any tangent popping up, so I didn't get that applied. Alright, so and let's see, do I want the circle or do I want that point? Well, part of the problem is when we create the surfaces, these aren't going to be exactly through that plane, so we'll need some construction geometry to define it. Alright, so maybe we'll go back into this plane, and I'll do that one more time with the center line. Bring this out. And there's not really a plane there to grab. So if I put a dimension in there, that would be the 360 divided by 5 is 72 degrees. And then we should be able to connect the dots so that I don't have to put in another plane. So from that line, even though it's wanting to draw an XY, it's showing me I always call them like the vector directions, the magnitude of the shift. Alright, so that gives me another set of geometry to go to the plane and help to define one more pentagon. So let's go back into the circle. Make sure I'm not on the midpoint. It does need to be tangent or to the end point. Maybe not. I went the other way. Oh, yeah, it does need to go there, and we can make that coincident since it didn't pop up. Alright, so this line and this line are in place. It did not, however, go tangent. So with the arc, so let's make that a driven dimension because I may have made an assumption there. So one of the ways that I manage the dimensions is I may want to come back to that dimension, but for now, let's go tangent. The over-defining condition. So that is able to move, but it has to come off of the midpoint. So either I didn't draw the circle exactly the same. No, circle's pretty close. Well, let's see if I can put these in here, because usually when that happens, you get an extra dimension, and now I'm having trouble seeing my plane. There we go. See if we can go this route. Not have it. Nope. Alright, so let's complete out the line for our geometry and connect all of those back. Okay, so that one didn't quite get there. So we'll start going through these, and then I may have to pause while I decipher what I did. And tangent. Alright, so 3D sketches reach that point to where one relation or something that got inferred can be kind of a pain to figure out what's going on here. So I said I'll go ahead and pause and do a little offline debug. Okay, so just kind of pushing some buttons, getting a chance to look at everything. I'm going to go ahead and make this 3 inches driven as well, because one of these two dimensions is going to be our primary or the parent. So if I come back in here, let's see if that will pick it up. No. And coincident. So it still didn't like that. Alright. So let's try tangent first. We'll bring those two together. Alright, so that adjusted the way that I want. And now these planes hopefully will intersect at that line. Coincident. And we go fully defined. Alright, so then we have to figure out what's going on with this one. So it is an equal. And if I were to make that point vertical or coincident, then that should pull that in. Okay. Alright, so this number drives this number, and the flatness that this plane wasn't intersecting that plane couldn't get to that line. Alright, so pretty wild. So that gives me enough geometry, because what I really need is this polygon and this polygon to generate the shapes. Alright, so one of the downsides to the 3D sketch is I'm not picking this geometry directly. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the 3D sketch temporarily. And we'll go into the top plane and convert. So even though I can't use this geometry directly in a feature, especially a feature that would try to consume it, I can S key and convert, which is the same as the convert up on the command manager. I don't have surfaces turned on, so let's go into the tabs and find surfaces, and we'll make this a planar surface, much like the extrude, except just think of it as we've cut out a piece of paper and that is our shape. Alright, so let's go to the 3D sketches again, and it just helps not having so much to select from. And we don't want to edit the sketch. That would put us back into our geometry. So let's go to Sketch, and we'll generate those 5 lines. And lost it there for a second. And convert. And we'll go back into the surfaces, create our planar surface, and OK. Alright, so we have that much geometry, and this is where I've done this enough, I've clicked on this 3D sketch plane enough that I really would add it to my heads-up display so I could go back and forth. Alright, so we're going to do a pattern. Let's see if pattern is on the surfaces here. Nope, not seeing it, so we still need to go back into features, find our circular pattern. The direction will be the axis, so we need to pick that central axis. There's going to be a total of 5 of these. It is not a feature or face. We're going to stay with the bodies. And it shows me the preview. We'll go ahead and accept. Alright, so this is where it gets interesting. If I just mirror across that plane, or I set a plane through here, that's not quite the midpoint of this geometry. So really what I need is another 3D sketch to help define that that intersection, or where those bodies would meet. So let's go back to Sketch, 3D sketch, and I'm thinking I'm going to hide that one temporarily. A little too much information going on. And being able to manage and control what's going on the screen when there's this much noise is pretty critical. So, alright, so the XY between the points. I am in XY coming this way, so I'm looking for that along X, just kind of glancing down to the lower left for the reference triad. And I'll connect that dot first. Then we can always come back and select it, and then this would be along Y. Or not. Control Z is your friend when we're doing this stuff, so let's see, why wouldn't that go along Y? Well, let's try the perpendicular then. There it was. Okay, so perpendicular works. That gives us a point at the midpoint. Should be where, when we mirror this, that the two will mesh or merge with minimal amount of gap. This isn't going to be perfect, but it will be close enough to perfect to get it in place. So selecting the top plane, control selecting the point, we come back to features, go into reference geometry, create a plane. It should be a parallel plane at a point. And then we can hide the 3D sketch. And we're going to take all of these bodies. Let's go ahead and start the mirror. And the plane that we created will be the mirror plane. And then the features, again, I want to stay with the bodies. It'll tell you pretty quick if it's not happy. We're not going to be able to knit these surfaces directly because there's going to be overlap. We have one more segment that we have to do in there to make that work. So, okay, so all of those get into the mix, and we go ahead and accept. Alright, so those are now overlapping and intersecting, and then this is where we can utilize the direct editing. So we're going to move copy bodies, which we're looking for rotate. I do not have an axis to rotate just yet, so I'm going to go back and show the 3D sketch again. And we'll pick all of the mirror bodies. Okay, so that should be everything. I want to rotate about my 3D sketch center. And this is back to that 72 degrees. And when I was doing that sketch, I in the process decided that I didn't really need that. So let's go ahead and see what we get. And that did not rotate. So what did I tell it? Okay, those are the bodies. And that is the rotation. Oh, not 72 degrees. That is one complete segment. How about 72 divided by 2? There we go, doing math again. Alright, and it's not copying it, so we should end up with 1 in the mix. Hide it. Control 7. Alright, so now we have something that is, if I hide one of these bodies, you'll be able to see inside. It's basically 12 pieces of paper glued together. For this to be something that we can work with or do a little bit more with, we need this to be a solid. So, under the surfaces, we have a knit surface, and the sections are going to be, well, let's clear that out. And we'll pick everything that we have. And it actually did not end up with any really small gaps, so that's kind of surprising. We want to create the solid. Don't really need to merge the entities. If I merge the entities, that would make one complete surface, meaning that there's something else I'm going to do to this. In the meantime, we'll just do create solid, and this should all of the surfaces disappear for the surface net, and it becomes a solid. And then we can tell that it's a solid because if I do a section view and look inside, it doesn't have that internal facets that we were looking for. So the test is always, I go back into the 3D sketch and I say instead of a 5-inch, I want a 2-inch, and we see if this rebuilds. Alright, so now we have that modifiable. And then one of the things I thought was interesting is that a sphere inside of this should touch all of those faces. So if I open up a sketch on the front plane, let's see which one. Actually, I should have done that. I should do that on the right plane because it's going to be in at least contact with that one. And it does that weird kind of shape because of the offsets on the facets. Okay, and if we go into then a center point arc, center point to the outside, and it comes down tangent to that face, then I'm going to leave this as a surface. We could put a solid in, but and not merge it, but the surface kind of looks cool too when we generate the geometry. So let's go ahead and let it rotate. And if I go to the transparencies and tell it that my surface knit will be transparent, then I can see that that touch. Now what I haven't, what I was interested in is finding that same location that will touch each of these points as a circumscribed as opposed to the inscribed sphere. So that's one I'll have to work on, but I think that looks pretty cool when they have the transparency in the surfaces. So again, with the surface, if I go back into the section view, well, I think the solid's going to pretty much, maybe not. You can still kind of see on the shading that they're saying that that's hollow. It doesn't have any thickness. So that's one of the advantages and also the disadvantage of the surface. So if we had a dodecahedron feature that would just build this, then it would do all of that lines, geometry, putting in the surfaces, and in effect when we make a rectangle, that's what the software is doing in the background, is tying all that information together and making it look really seamless. And I always call these reasons not to use the 3D sketch until you really have a need for it. The 3D sketching and its associated rules and things that that happen in process are confusing to say the least. It takes again, looking through that noise and being able to digest what's going on, diagnosing those errors. And there comes a point where on 3D sketches I've just accepted that geometry at that point, got it to a point where it's fully defined, accepted it, started another 3D sketch, and continued on with the geometry that I'm creating. So there's another level of complexity in this that you really want to take into consideration. So hopefully you will try the dodecahedron at some point and have fun with it.